You've done your research, you've read the reviews, you've talked to other homeschool moms, and yet that carefully chosen curriculum just isn't working. Before you list it for sale or before you're tempted to ignite it on fire, what if you could save it? I've been there. The science curriculum that I hated the format of it so much that I avoided teaching it. And the math curriculum that one kiddo loved and left another kiddo in tears. Or the science curriculum that left me in tears. If you've homeschooled for any length of time, you've probably had that curriculum that just was a bad fit. Rather than starting over, including all the time spent for shopping and the money, what if you could save it? Today I'm going to share with you a few tweaks that may make that misfit curriculum into one that's going to work for your homeschool and maybe even turn it into one that you'll actually enjoy. Here's the thing. You are the boss of your curriculum. When companies write it, they're writing for mass appeal because they're trying to reach a broad audience and sell it to that audience. But that means they're not writing it for you. But you are left implementing it for you in your homeschool. So when you try to fit something that is meant to appeal to everyone and make it fit perfectly as is for your homeschool, that can be a problem. My first thing is, I want you to ignore the length of time a lesson or the curriculum says that it should take to complete it. Because there are going to be parts where it feels like you are never going to move on from a topic. And then there are other parts where you're going to be like, wait, how are we done already? Either because you really liked it and you want more, or because they didn't give it the time that you think it deserves. And in some curriculum, the overall pacing is fine, while the individual lessons make no sense for your homeschool. So make the lessons shorter or longer, but do the subject less frequently. Right now, Matthew is doing word roots from Critical Thinking Company, and we had it scheduled to do every day because it's just one page, and I thought it'd be nice and short. You'll feel like you get accomplished. For him, he kept avoiding it. So rather than doing it daily as it suggests, we are doing it once a week and doing 3 or 4 pages at a time. It depends on the week. Well, you know what? It's getting done now. Because for him, doing it switching gears for a short lesson was really difficult. If your kiddo is really enjoying a topic in the thing, sometimes, yes, you need to move on because there are other topics to do. But what if you just paused and gave it another day or two and let them dig in more on that topic? And I'll share a few ideas to go along with that at the end of the video, so make sure you stay tuned for that part. If they like the curriculum well enough, but they're just done with the topic, whatever it is, if you can move on without it hurting their future understanding of the knowledge, like this is harder to do in something like math, but if you can move on, do it. You're always going to have ways to fill your time later on. And remember that in a public school setting, their goal is to complete somewhere around 75% of a curriculum in a school year. And that's complete. You do not have to do every problem on every page in order to do the curriculum for the year and call it complete. I'm also a big fan of teaching to mastery for kids. And I know this gets a little more difficult at the high school level, but if they're showing a really strong understanding of the first half of a math lesson, for example, do they really need to do the second half? Maybe, but maybe not. Matthew has had a ton of previous knowledge about World War II. So this year, while he's doing 20th century world history, we pretty quickly moved through World War II because he's got a really good understanding. And there are lots of other topics that we would rather spend more time on. It is okay to make these adjustments. When we match the pacing to the kiddo we have in front of us, even if it's a curriculum they don't love or you don't love, making those kind of adjustments can really make a big difference in our attitudes. Let's talk about some ways that we can change the format, because sometimes the way that kids are absorbing the information or they're putting it out is a misfit. Let's say they're reading about some battle or some science topic and it's just not working in their heads. The explanation isn't good, or the format of the textbook, whatever. Can you find a video that summarizes it instead? If your goal is for a kiddo to absorb the knowledge, it doesn't matter what format it's being presented to them in. In that, like if your curriculum is a textbook, but for this topic they need a video, do it. It doesn't matter. Now, I will say that sometimes my goal is that they learn to slog through a difficult textbook reading. Because especially for a college-bound kiddo, it's important that, at least at the high school level, I don't do this younger, but for the high school level, that they learn to get through a difficult text. But I grade accordingly, because in that instance, my goal is the process of learning to manage a textbook and manage their reading and all of that, rather than absorbing the information. Now, I've said this many times, but one of my goals for homeschooling in general is to enjoy time with my kids and spend that time really talking to them and learning together. And so discussion is a great way to do this, especially at the high school level. So regularly, as in once a week or so, I take one of their writings that they are supposed to do, a response or a summary or whatever for any subject, and we have a discussion instead. But if you ask a question like, what was in your reading? You are going to get a boring conversation. But if you ask questions like, give me a level 1 explanation of that topic from physics, your kiddo is going to have to understand it well enough that they can think about what's important and then simplify it to a very basic level. Matthew has a ridiculous knowledge of astronomy and physics, and I cannot understand. I don't have that knowledge. So when I ask him to give me a level 1 explanation, he really has to think through and critically analyze what's important and how to present it in a way that's going to work. All of these are going to give us kind of a starting point for discussion. And then I can add in questions like, well, what connections did you make to something you already knew? Or what went wrong with that battle or that science experiment? What questions do you still have? All of these are going to help you really assess what your kids know. And even if you didn't do the reading yourself or watch the video, from there, you've got a basics of enough understanding that you can keep asking questions. And then you're going to have a rich discussion that is far better for understanding and assessing what your kids know than you do, or than a written assignment could. And you've gotten to hang out with your kids. Win-win in my book. Other ideas about changing the formats include, are they reading on screens? I have one kiddo who cannot read well on screens at all. So most things I end up printing out for him. Sometimes I'll send a PDF to our e-ink Kindle, our Kindle Paperwhite, which is fine for him. Now my other two, they don't mind reading on screens, but they really prefer reading on a tablet, something they can hold in their hands versus a desktop monitor or a laptop. Writing, especially at the high school level, is so much more than just answering the question, because they have to organize their thoughts and get them actually out, do the editing, all these other parts that we forget about sometimes. So if you have a curriculum that otherwise is pretty decent, but the writing, try out Google voice typing inside of Google Docs. If you've never used it, it's under the tools menu. It's not perfect and it doesn't always capture the words exactly. Your kid is going to have to go back and fix things like grammar, punctuation, especially grammar-wise, because we don't always realize how we speak versus how we might actually write things. But it will make the process easier because they've eliminated the step of getting their thoughts out. Then it's just a matter of fixing those punctuation marks and moving sentences around, and that can really be huge for some kiddos. My idea number 3 for you is to tap into their interests. I think this is one of the most underutilized tools, ideas, especially at the high school level, because when we've got little kids, of course, we're like following their interests and whatever animal they're really into, we're learning about that. And if they want to go outside and explore in the woods, we do that. And then comes high school. This can really help, especially if the complaint is that a curriculum is boring. So what spin can you put on the curriculum? For Elizabeth in U.S. history, and I've talked about this before, she was really getting into older music when she was doing it. And so I found a playlist from NPR that was the top 100 songs of the 20th century. And each song also had an article to go with it about the time period or the singer or some way that it connects. Every unit, she had to listen to some songs, read a few articles, and then pick songs to share with me. It was so much fun. She learned about how the music related to history. I learned about what interested her, and it was just a little tweak that didn't have a lot of time, but was something that she really enjoyed. Ben loves gardening. So last year when we did medieval history, I made sure to add in some medieval garden stuff. He got to learn about plants and gardening techniques and all of these little things that just added a little bit of something that interested him. Again, none of these ideas have to take all that much time. You could do them once a week. You could do them once a month at the end of a unit. But there are ways to tap into what your kiddo likes and find a way to make their interests relate to these subjects. And don't be afraid just to shorten some of their readings or problem sets to add in some of these ideas. You are the boss. If your kiddo really enjoys art, what science is in their art? Or what art is out there that is about that topic? How does their math relate to the real world? Are there fiction books you could add in for science or for history? What about movies? Maybe they like animation and so they want to learn to animate the organs when you're studying health. Procreate has a really cool activity for elements. Maybe they could work on an app for some aspect of their science topic or their history topic or whatever. Are there citizen science activities that will help your kiddos take what they're learning in the textbook and see how they work in the real world? Now, sometimes curriculum is just going to be a terrible fit no matter what. But if there are ways that you can save it through these small tweak ideas, go for it. You're the boss. Now, if you want more ideas on how to customize curriculum for your homeschool and for your kiddo, click on the video on the screen or the ones down in the description box, and I will see you over there.